These are the 5 most common things that you can look towards to know whether or not your ex is an avoidant. The first is that they shut down when things got too emotional. Whenever you tried to have a deep conversation with them, it felt like you constantly had to walk on eggshells because of how they would respond to that. They would either get super upset or they would pull away from you and just not want to engage. And it was because of them feeling vulnerable and having to try to deal with the conflicts and whatever emotions you guys are trying to work on that caused them to need to feel to pull away, because they don't want to feel those emotions ultimately, right? They want to do everything that they possibly can to control the situations that they have, so that way they can make sure that they're not going to feel those unwanted emotions. You probably know this right away, but this is where you get that anxiety feeling whenever you're trying to go down this route, because you know that they're going to respond in such a negative way and even a drastic way, which is typically them distancing themselves from you and just not really doing anything to try to rectify this, and you essentially have to do all of the work to try to make sure things are okay and to work things out from there. Which segues perfectly into the second thing, and that is they needed a lot of space but got defensive when you asked for connection. You felt guilt for needing closeness from them. Every time you tried to achieve this in a direct or indirect way, they got super defensive about it and they got upset and they made you feel like you were doing something wrong, and when in actuality, you were just doing the natural thing and expressing your own emotions and love towards them and trying to get the relationship to feel more intimate and natural. But they essentially did not want to go that route because it would cause them to feel vulnerable or emotions that they didn't want to feel in that moment, right? They, again, want to make sure that they're controlling things to only be what they want. They only want it to go to a certain level for what they feel comfortable with. And whenever it goes beyond that, that's when they get super frustrated and upset because they don't want to feel or deal with those emotions. They essentially label emotional needs as being too much or needy, but that's not the case here, right? You are just naturally expressing yourself and your feelings and your wants to them, but they don't see it that way. They see it as you are not respecting what they need and what they want, but in actuality, what they need and what they want, which is essentially you catering to their needs, which is not expressing any of your emotions, and it's really lopsided to where it's all about them and little to none about you and your wants and needs, because to them, that's a threat to their emotional well-being. The third thing is that they were hot and cold without explanation. One week they were sweet and close, and the next they were distant or annoyed. And this can be so confusing because the same exact thing that you did to cause them to be sweet and close to you, the next week would cause them to be frustrated or have a completely different response. And it's really due to how this avoidant attachment style is interpreting things and why it can be so draining and hard to go through a relationship with someone like this, because you don't know what version of them you're going to be getting that day, and it's very draining to have to go through that and just constantly be on edge and walk on eggshells instead of just having things naturally flow. So this consistently led you to feel more confused than reassured in the relationship, and you probably were losing your mind, right? You just couldn't tell what was going on, and you probably were blaming yourself even as to why this relationship couldn't work, because they kept putting that blame on you and making you seem like you were the problem. But in actuality, it was due to this avoidant attachment style turning on and off at certain points in time, depending upon what state they are in and what triggered it to come up. The fourth sign is that they minimized or dismissed your feelings. Every time you expressed your hurt, they shut down or got angry, and you rarely felt heard or understood. And it's because, again, they don't want to go down this route due to them not knowing how to handle this, because their caregivers were not a role model as to how you were supposed to respond to these things or a healthy way to navigate these things to understand someone else's point of view and how they can work through this and try to show up for that person. because essentially their caregiver never modeled a healthy way to go through this. And because of that, this avoidant attachment style was the response to something like this. So instead of them seeing this as an opportunity to try to sit down with you and understand what's going on, they take it as a threat and they go into a fight or flight mode, and is why they have such a drastic response to this, which leaves you feeling more hurt and misunderstood and feeling like you're a problem. But in actuality, this was all due to them and their willingness to not want to navigate this due to them feeling vulnerable and not knowing how to handle this. And the fifth and final most common thing is that they left instead of repairing conflicts. This is when things got tough, when you were in the thick of it trying to work on this and trying to just get to a place where the both of you can understand each other and try to have this be a mutual relationship where both of your needs are met and not just one. They just fled instead of trying to work through that. And they may give you all these different excuses as to why they're walking away, and it may seem good in the moment, but in actuality, all this is that they don't want to deal with the conflict. They don't want to deal with the conflict because, one, they don't know how to navigate this because they never were shown this in a healthy way, and two, they don't want to deal with the emotions that are going to come up, the vulnerability, all those things that you will naturally expect when you're working through this. They want to avoid that because they know that that's going to be a negative thing for them. They would rather just walk away and distract themselves with someone else or doing something to make sure that they don't have to deal with this. And this becomes very frustrating for you because you all this time have tried to do everything that you possibly could to make them feel seen, heard, and understood, and to work on things because you love them and you want this relationship to actually work out. And instead of them realizing that, they just simply are like, you know what? I'd rather just step away and just not do any of that. And this can be so frustrating for you, and it hurts a lot, and you are completely validated in how you're feeling about this. But I hope that you can start to look at this as an opportunity to really understand what's going on here. And that is, they haven't done what is necessary to try to work through this. And this is something that you need to realize and understand, because you could continue to go through this process thinking that it's you, and in actuality, it's due to this avoidant attachment style. And this is the first big step to realizing this, is understanding that this person probably is an avoidant, so that you don't go crazy trying to do all of these different things, thinking that maybe they'll come to that realization, just for them not to do that. And they just continue to run this cycle over and over again, and you're wasting your time, energy, and effort, because at the end of the day, this is a big thing that this avoidant is going to have to process and work through. And they're often going to need assistance from a therapist to help them understand this and work through it. And typically, they're not going to be able to do that while they're in the relationship with you. And they too are going to need space away so that they can be able to get that help and hopefully work through this. But at the end of the day, you have to prioritize yourself. And I'm hoping that you can understand how toxic really this is, and you can start to focus on yourself and doing what is best for you. And chances are what is going to be best for you is to go no contact officially with them, so that you can give them the space to understand this and hopefully work on this, but also give yourself the space to know what do you need to do, what are your needs, and to put that same energy, effort, love, and commitment that you put into them back into yourself, because you now deserve this. Again, you did everything that you possibly could to try to help them through this. This is on them, and they're going to have to be the ones to deal with it. But right now, it's important for you to focus on yourself and, again, do what's best for you. I hope that you did enjoy today's video. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.